Good. RFID tech. Is the AV industry ready? Fair question. The AV industry is offering RFID a very harsh environment with all the copper that we're using, metals, aluminum, whatever. Works for me. So RFID, it's promising, but you better know what you're getting yourself into. When I say promising, then this is approximately what you're looking at. You'll be scanning approximately 5 times quicker compared to QR and barcodes, and it will reduce warehouse labor by approximately 25%. If you apply this properly, then this is actually within reach. There are a few things that need to be arranged. With that I mean there are quite a few factors involved to actually make RFID work. Factors as your warehouse is the biggest one. You will see this later coming by in the presentation where one of our Australian users are saying that the more movements there are in the warehouse, the more likely it is that equipment is being scanned surplus. Equipment being scanned that should not have been scanned. But also think of you having a steel roof, for instance. If that's the case, you have plenty of reflections, meaning that your RFID scanning should be arranged to that. If you are scanning trusses, it's actually acting as antennas. So there's quite some funny business going on when it comes to RFID. Again, you better know what you're getting yourself into. But first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Joost Maris, originally from the Netherlands. I'm working for Rentman rental software. From the AV industry now for 18 years. I started in business-to-business sales 12 years ago, and I've been visiting quite some AV rental houses ever since. Have been working at Rentman 6 years ago. And at Rentman, we help AV and event companies manage their daily operations and improve their workflows in a digital way. Basically, we're offering a solution that allows you to plan, to quote, to track your assets, etc. Nowadays, I'm freelancing, and I'm assisting audiovisual rental houses in digitizing their operations and more broadly. So think of using Rentman, position that within the IT landscape so it acts simultaneously. It finds alignment with the ERP software, the HR software, WMS software, and way more if that's the case. But obviously, for smaller companies, sometimes Rentman suffices on itself. Good, now that's out there. What I've learned in these last 18 years is that the operations of an AV rental company, they come down to 3 elements, what I like to call them. It's communication, planning, and logistics. Now let me just give you a very simple example, which is already quite related to the thing that we're discussing today. If an item would return to your warehouse faulty, delayed, or not at all, that will affect your future planning. And you better make sure that you communicate your ass off to actually make it work, to make the next project going out successfully. It's already one example. A different one that I can give you is you can plan your crew. However, maybe it's a bigger challenge to actually make sure that the crew is aware of what needs to get done on site. I think this is something that we can all relate to. Now, I think we can all, again, relate to the fact that it is of importance that you know for sure that the right equipment is going out on the right time. However, if we take a look at our own users, we actually provide them 2 tools to make sure warehouse movements are being. We offer them a digital way by using the Rentman app. You could scan with that, not necessarily needed, however you could. Or you're using a more analog approach, simply a PDF piece of paper and you check off whatever you've packed and whatnot. So then take a look, then approximately 51% of our users, they decide to invest, 70% of our users decide to invest in that digital approach. However, only 51% are using it. Now, I've got some interesting statistics for you just to give you some insights on how we, within the audiovisual rental industry, are actually covering our logistical operations. First of all, if we solely look at those users that are using the digital tools, you will find that 49% of them are scanning assets out piece by piece. 49%. So again, just to sum it up, 50% approximately of our users are using the digital approach, and 50% of them are actually using it to scan piece by piece. So 1 out of 4. Then we have 13% of the jobs are going out more in bulk. So what I mean with that is, let's say you would have a XLR cable, trusses, or more bulky items. You will basically just count to 30, then process, I've packed 30, done. Yeah? And then lastly, the book everything button. There's no accuracy in that at all. It's just book everything, done. Yeah? So you might as well use paper at that point. Now, surprisingly, if you take a closer look, then you find that 59% of our users are using that button during the returning process. 59% of our users are just processing their project return and actually do not check it accurately. So prepare to be amazed, first of all, because just keep in mind that there are 50,000 people using our tools every day to manage their AV operations. And if we would take a look at 2022, there was more than 100 million items being planned in total. Now, my question to you is, how many of them got returned too late? 68 million. 68 million items have been returned delayed. And it's not that the project was returned late, not at all. The project was actually in general, 5% of the projects have been returned too late. But here you can see it, all these items were just being processed, quickly returned. Nobody was taking a look at it actually. But this only says something about how we accurately return this, process this. Not necessarily how we do a quality check. And that's not something that we can take from our user analytics. We cannot see if they check it yes or no. So that's why I asked my network on LinkedIn. And now you can see that out of only 1 on 4 companies actually check all the equipment every time it returns. Regardless if it's that from a production or if that's from dry hire, every time it hits the warehouse, it gets checked. 1 out of 4 companies actually doing it. If you would then include the dry hire ones, then you could say approximately 1 out of 2, 54% of the jobs are being checked return. But it still leaves 1 out of 2 jobs just being returned, nobody's taking a look at it. So we have been taking a look at equipment, but now let's take a look at projects, jobs that we have been processing out. Again, in 2022, we had over 1 million jobs being listed within Rentman rental software. Question to you is, how many projects of them were accurately returned? Only 32%. And with accurately returned, I really mean processing equipment line by line, or at least putting a thorough effort in knowing for sure that what you're sending out also have been returned from A to Z. Now, as these numbers we consider to be quite disappointing, you could almost wonder yourself, like, is there no reason for this? I mean, in theory, we all understand that when something returns faulty, when something returns delayed or not at all, in theory, we all understand that this will harm your future planning. But is that then truly the case? I can truthfully say that yes, that is. And I'm also pretty sure that everybody here is aware and convinced about that. However, it's simply too time consuming to do it. Is this something that we can all relate to, that it's just too time consuming to process all these items returned? I see some nodding faces, so I guess I have a point. Good. Now, to emphasize why this is of importance, it's not only because equipment is returning faulty, defective, whatever. It's also because projects are going out differently from how you've initially planned them. If you would take a look, 1 million projects have been listed. Now, it's interesting to see how out of these 1 million projects, how many projects have registered the feedback of adding additional equipment. And then you can see that 45% of the jobs have been doing that. So 45% of the jobs have been going out with other equipment than initially planned. Equipment got added, alternative equipment was listed, equipment was left behind. 45.5%. Now we're going to go one step further, because we can only conclude this over the jobs that actually have been reported within Rentman. But again, only 50% of our users, or 49, are actually doing this. So that means that there are 238,645 jobs being sent out with different projects and not being checked returned fully. Simply because they haven't reported this within Rentman. Maybe they have scribbled this on a piece of paper, but I think it's safe to assume it's likely nobody would have taken a look at this anymore. Now, if you just put this into perspective, 238,000 jobs, that's the equivalent of over 700,000 items. Again, spread over 50,000 users, 700,000 items are just being given away, and nobody will take a look at if it has been returned, yes or no. then it's the equivalent of the inventory of 200 AV rental houses. And again, we all understand the urgency of doing this properly. But this is also exactly what we say. It's exceptional that an AV rental house is logistical shit together. And of course, I understand, again, we all understand the urgency, and we have it in our ability to actually change this grass field filled with cows into a festival area where thousands of people can have the times of their lives. That is in our ability, and we are logistical heroes to be able to do this. But I think we can all relate to these kind of pain points, where we can see that there's stock differences coming up, so you cannot rely on the stock levels that are listed within your rental management solution anymore, for instance. Or a project may be getting delayed because you didn't have it sorted. And that's where we believe that RFID comes in. RFID allows you to scan equipment without physically allocating a QR or barcode. It just allows you to scan equipment from a distance, even though it's still within your flight case. As you can see here, an RFID handheld, as I have one right over here, can be hovered, can be waved over your flight case, and it will pick up whatever is inside. Now, even though this technology is already possible for many, many of years, I'm here to tell you that RFID technology took leaps, and if applied correctly, this can be applicable within the AV industry. Again, it will, in average, it will make your warehouse process go five times faster compared to QR barcode scanning, especially if you're also approaching your bulk items. And it will save you approximately 25% on warehouse labor. And these are numbers that I'm not presenting you based on the theory that we have. No, this is numbers that I present you based on the use cases that we have running right now. There are 29 to be found, all are spread over the Netherlands and Belgium, because that's where we're originally from. But 29 use cases, and this is what I can report that they are achieving. But just to give you a few examples. With RFID, it allows you to speed up. Here you have an example, 30 seconds with QR codes, 3 seconds when applying RFID. So that's actually 9 times as quick. But or 10 times, sorry. However, this is a very easy example. I mean, it's a meat rack filled with lighting fixtures. Challenges are as soon as you start scanning cable crates, for instance, shackles, or whatever kind of bulky items that are made out of metal or copper or anything else that could act as an antenna. But also it will increase the traceability of your items. And with increasing traceability, what I mean is that every item within your warehouse will become unique. So that means not only your moving lights, not only your speakers or your amplifiers, but also your cables, also your trusses, also everything else. And the benefit of having that unique is that you can trace it based on the serial number level. With that I mean, you would scan serial number 123 out on project A. So as soon as asset 123 is returning, you will know it returns from project A. So in other words, you will be able to process jobs in bulk return and still trace back from which project an item is coming from. Make sense? And lastly, you're increasing your accuracy in general. And this is also the exact trade-off. I mean, there's speed improvements. However, usually speed improvements, they will actually result you in decreasing your accuracy. But with RFID, that doesn't have to be the case. You're increasing your accuracy because you are simply checking if you indeed packed 30 cables, for instance. It will not scan 29 as long as you try it again, for instance, until you end up with 30. And if you keep ending up with 29, that's a reason for you to actually manually recount, for instance. Without physical presence, the serial number could not get processed. Now, we have some interviews online. If you'd like to take a look at them, go to our website, rentman.io, take a look at our YouTube channels. You will find plenty of interviews with AV rental professionals, just like you, who have been applying RFID in the past. But there are a few takeaways that I'd like to present today. This is from a company called Resolution X. It's a company from Melbourne, Australia. They're already applying RFID for many years. And basically they said, we're going to serialize our entire inventory. We might as well then also apply RFID. But Tim, the managing director, he says the higher the density of RFID tags within the warehouse, the less accuracy you have. And it might sound weird up front, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Because the biggest thing that could go wrong, or there are plenty of things that could go wrong, but one of the things that could go wrong is that you're scanning equipment that should not get scanned. Yeah? More about that later. But as soon as items are on the move, of course that's getting more likely, right? I mean, you can scan something right in front of you, that will be safe. However, if a colleague is just passing you by with a different flight case, obviously that could happen. And that's why also, spoiler already, it doesn't make sense to apply RFID if your rental management solution isn't offering it natively, because there is quite some impact on the scanning process, but I'll get back to that later. So does this mean that you need to rearrange your warehouse, that you need to create clear zones or whatever? You could benefit from it. It's at least something that you need to reconsider. You need to research the feasibility of RFID before actually investing in this. And there's a serious amount, and I will show you that later on as well. But for now, if you really consider this, then please think of just booking a meeting with somebody who knows about this. You can scan that QR code right on the leaflet to schedule a one-on-one session. And even if you'd like, there are also services available where somebody with knowledge is coming by to take a look at your warehouse, to do measurements, and actually give you some proper advice. Next one is Peter. He says, if you're next to items being prepped, you run the risk of returning items that haven't even left. And that's why it is of importance that your warehouse is just a clean space. Yeah? It's as soon as our equipment is going out and in on the same lane at the same time, that's too prone to error. You really need to reconsider how your movements are within the warehouse. And then lastly, Chris from Lots for Life, a company in Belgium, also using RFID already since 2020. They say your readings need to be correct for 200%, because if not, the whole system becomes questionable. Now, I can very much relate to this. That is indeed true. However, 100% accuracy, you are able to get 100% accuracy. Let me put it like this. If you're putting right now in front of me a flight case with, let's say, 65 cables in there, chances are very likely that I will scan 65 cables. But if I would scan that flight case 10 times, it could also be that one time I picked up 64. Yeah? So that's why we at Rentman, we do not believe that RFID should be your point of reference. RFID for you could be a tool to check whatever you think you have packed, but let it not be your point of reference. Do you get what I mean? Yeah? As said, RFID took leaps, and it's getting better and better. But this is how it is today. So does this mean that it's not worth it? I believe it still is. And 29 of our test cases also believe it still is. The idea is, let me just walk you through this process. This is how approximately your warehouse process would look like. You go into your warehouse, you pack, let's say, 40 cables. That takes you a minute, maybe. So then you put it into the prep zone, then somebody scans it with RFID. First of all, they would check, is this indeed 40 cables? And also secondly, which 40 cables exactly? Because from that moment on, you know serial numbers, uniqueness, and therefore you understand to which project it's leaving, and therefore you also know from which project it's returning. That step takes around 4 to 5 seconds. But then the real win comes in. Because as soon as a flight case is returning to the warehouse, you know there should be 40 cables in there. That's already decided. And if that is not the case, because on-site everything just got piled up on one big bulk, still you would understand which items have not been returned, and you would just walk into the warehouse, to the warehouse location, scan if the item truly isn't there to be found. Yeah? So therefore it's actually quite easy to filter it out. Now there are companies that are using RFID and that say that within their general terms and conditions, they say, if you do business with us, you accept the fact that we consider RFID to be our point of reference. Be careful with that, of course. But yeah, you will not be the first one. Good. I hope this is painting you a more realistic image of what RFID is, what you're able to do with this. Don't want to be pessimistic here, just want to be realistic. Now, as said, RFID took leaps. And we at Rentman, we understand the audiovisual industry like the back of our hand. We also understand what kind of challenges they are running into. However, we are no RFID specialists. RFID technology is truly something specialistic thing and that's for others, not for us. That's why we've partnered up with a company called Alltech. Alltech is a company from Belgium that have been applying RFID in the global industry already for years. We just have been researching which tag has been applied best, performing best within the AV environment. Now we base that on 3 key factors: scannability, durability, and size. And let me just walk you through them quickly. Scannability, because you want your tag to be powerful, yet not too powerful enough. The reason why is you want it to be powerful because otherwise it will not be able to broadcast the signal through, let's say, a cable case. Right? Harsh environment, you want that signal to come through. However, you also don't want it to be too powerful because if you're not careful, you will always scan it, regardless where you are. Now, there are also use cases where you actually want a very powerful tag. For instance, we've been running through a use case where there was a company with an OB truck, and they wanted to be able to, every time the OB truck returns, to be able to just run a quick inventory check. Did it return completely, yes or no? Well, then of course you need long distances. But within normal AV circumstances, rental circumstances, we understood that 2 to 3 yards, that's approximately it. And the only way to do it is just to scan this and try it in practice. Durability, the last thing that we want is that there is an expiration date on your tags. Because if there's an expiration date on your tags, there will be an expiration date on the processes of your warehouse, the accuracy of your warehouse. And of course, that's the last thing that you want. And third, size. Again, there's a trade-off. The smaller the tag becomes, the weaker it gets. Yeah. So it should be big enough, yet not too big. Ideally, we would have wanted the tag to be fittable within a Schuko or a CE plug, for instance. So these were the key components that we were looking for. And basically what we've done is we just received hundreds of tags. Hundreds of tags from Alltech, that company I was just referring to, but also from RFID AV professionals using RFID, to just see whatever performs best. And we came to the point of giving up. And it was especially because, and this is something that I guess many people can relate to, especially if you're in the wireless microphone technology. Having 1 wireless microphone works. Having 5 works. Having 50 becomes a different story. It starts intermodulating, it starts acting funny. Let's put it like this. And that's what happens with RFID as well. If I would have 1 pile of, let's say, 10 RFID tags just stacked right upon each other, chances are I will only scan 7, simply because it starts intermodulating. And this became a true issue because we really foresaw that, especially if you would scan smaller cables like hinge cables or mini jacks or whatever, USB-C, you would have, chances are there's 1 flight case, 40 cables in there, so they're just packed up each other quite compactly. So again, we came to a point of giving up. But before we were breaking, we started breaking the tags. Because again, that durability aspect was quite important. From that point of view, I can truly say a bendable tag is not for the AV industry. It will bend once, fine. It will bend twice, 5 times, 10 times, okay. But there comes a point where it gives up. Yeah, it's you better have hard tag. And of course, if you have like a metal surface, for instance, that's fine to use a bendable tag because the surface where it's being pasted on will not bend. But in this particular example, you better make sure that you have a metal tag because that's something else than an all-purpose tag. Good. So we started scanning for, and we literally had hundreds. But then eventually, when we came to the point of giving up, these were presented. Now, I know I'm a butcher and I'm judging my own meat here, but yeah, sorry for that. However, these are properly suitable for the AV industry. We have our go-to example was indeed a flight case, a truck-sized flight case, just filled with a variety of cables. So think of like 400 volt cables, or speak-on cables, XLR cables, BNC cables, and just all bulked into each other, and then be scannable. And with these tags, we are performing 100% accuracy. But you will not hear me guarantee you that if you would scan it 10 flight cases, that you would always scan with 100% accuracy. Chances are you would need to scan 1 again. Yeah. So again, just reconsider to be RFID to be your point of reference. Now, once we have found the right RFID tech, or at least the technology, we just need to tweak it a bit. First of all, we made sure that this comes in two sizes. One, this size is very suitable for indeed just mounting it within the CEE plug, within the Schuko plug, or on top of your lighting fixtures or whatever else you have. The glue that's on there is not the first one that you could find. It's actually on my phone ever since April. It started as a joke. It's still here. But yeah, so that's one thing. But secondly, we also came up with a bit smaller one, still same technology. Sorry, a bit larger one, same technology, but just physically just a bit larger. So it could have two larger holes within it. So you can also mount it by using nails or whatever you'd like to use. And we agreed to come up with more than just this particular tech. And if you'd like to see the others, please come by on our booth. It's right over there to take a look. But this is the main one, I would say. If you're looking for a tag to scan your cables, your trusses, anything else that's out of metal, which is not ideal, these are the ones. And they are around €1.65 a piece. Now, this morning I checked it up. That's £1.41. Good. Now, question is, gate versus handheld. This is the handheld I'm referring to. Now, I guess everybody from the AV industry, we all like to see RFID being the magic bullet, right? You just wheel through a gate and you're done. That's, I'm not going to say impossible. However, it's going to be tricky. And you can see why right over here. Give it 1 sec, please. This is our far from ideal, however, setup of a gate. We've had more, don't worry, but this is just the best footage that I had. Now what you can see here, you see, is it pointing? No, you can't see it return. But you can see one of those wide thingies that was a scanner. You can see it right being mounted there statically. Now the issue of something that's mounted statically, if an item comes by, chances are it will not be able to look around the corner, so to say. It's just there, mounted statically. So chances are, if it will not be able to pick up that one tag, it will never be able to pick up that one tag unless you start moving that thing around. And just moving it 2D, as you can see on this conveyor belt, isn't really going to cut it. You need the flexibility of your wrist to actually give RFID a fair chance of being picked up. Now, there are gates out there that are keeping this in mind, where there are indeed scanners, or there are like 40 or 30 scanners involved, and that will increase the chance of something being scanned. They're out there, however, they are very expensive. And then you get to a point where a scanner like this costs around €2,000, and a scanner which is far away from that, way more professional, costs around 10 times as much. So then you can start wondering, what suffices, right? So for now, we would say handhelds. Gates are out there. Gates will constantly be in development. That counts for RFID in general, especially gates. So hopefully one day soon. But I can also say that from the use cases that we have been speaking to that are already applying RFID, they all say that they are using handhelds to check whatever the gate has been scanning. Yeah? So it all comes down to the handheld, one way or another. Good. Last thing that I want to say about this is the idea of just driving your truck through a gate and then everything will be scanned. That's not only a dream, it's a wet dream. It's never say never, of course, but pretty sure, not really, especially with an AV, I do not really see that working one day soon, at least, but who knows. Now, then, it's not only about hardware, it's also about software. And I already said this before, I don't really consider RFID to be achievable within software that is not supporting it natively. And that's because of the simple fact that if you would scan something with a QR code, you scan it to process it, right? Otherwise you would not have scanned it. But with RFID, it could very well be that you picked something up that shouldn't have been picked up, and that's why you want to exclude it. So there's just an additional step. You want to make sure that what you have scanned is intended to be scanned. Make sense? So that's one thing. Second of all, there are rental houses out there, AV rental houses out there, that have integrated their WMS, warehouse management software, with their RMS, rental management software, and them just speaking to each other, which makes sense a lot. However, the downside to that is it could very well be that the WMS is processing tags quicker than the rental management solution can process it. Does that make sense? So as a result, you're actually shipping your equipment twice, because the WMS software said it's being taken out, and then the rental management software didn't hear it, so to say. So therefore, the order is still open. There are actually examples in practice where this is happening. Doesn't necessarily always have to be the case. However, this is likely to come up if your rental management solution is very outdated. And then thirdly, but this only counts for those that want to scan all their assets. So that includes their bulky items as well. Today you would have, let's say, an XLR cable, XLR free 5 meters, and you would have 100 of them. Today there will be one item with a quantity of 100. Tomorrow, if you would use RFID, that will be one item that includes 100 serial numbers. Now it's up to you to decide, are you going to list 100 serial numbers and give them a reference? Or do you want to have software that allows you to just mount a tag on your cables, and then by scanning it, you create 100 serial numbers? Make sense? It's way quicker, of course, to do this. Now, as said before, we have 29 test cases running right now, and one of them is MHB. It's a rental house in the Netherlands. There are approximately 20 full-timers working for this company. It's very decent size. They claim RFID could slice time spent on findings lost items by half or more. And apart from this, these are also the guys that I can prove that you indeed reduce 25% of your warehouse labor costs, because what they have been doing before in the warehouse, they nowadays are doing with free, simply by applying RFID. So here we have it again. Scan 5 times quicker compared to QR barcodes, reduce warehouse by 25%. This is the result of their use case, but there are many out there that I can actually have that proof from. Now, so the question is, what is this going to cost you? Got you an answer. First of all, you need to decide, are you going to tag everything, or just your more highly valued assets? Yeah. Let's say you would include all your bulk items, then there's actually quite a good trick. Just take a look at all the items that you have, all the rental items that you have with a realistic quantity number. So exclude the ones with 9,999, exclude those that with quantities set to 0, exclude those that are sales items or whatever. And the items that you then have remaining, multiply that with 18. Then when looking at all our thousands of users, on average we could say, if we would indeed filter that out, the total potential amount of serial numbers that you could have, if you would also include all your bulk items, is the amount of line items multiplied with 18. Yeah? So, of course, like, what is typical? What I've seen so far, there's always somewhere between 10 and 20,000 tags. But let's take 10,000 tags as an example. Sorry, this is in euros. 10,000 tags, your purchase was 16,500. 3 scanners, approximately 2,000 a piece, ends you up with 22,000. Take 5,000 additional costs in terms of the consultancy, right? As said before, you need to, at least we strongly advise you to see how feasible RFID tracking actually is within your warehouse. Let's say this is approximately 5,000 euros. It ends you up with 27,000 euros, and I've checked as well, there was, if I'm not mistaken, a bit over 23,000 pounds. Yeah? So again, know what you're getting into. That's all I'm saying. So this is the money point of view. Let's take a look at time, labor. Be careful what you wish for, first of all. I'm not going to make this prettier as it is. However, it is doable. As long as you have the right tools for this, it is doable. Here you can see, for instance, a clip which is suitable for trusses, which has tie wraps which will not open up your hands once you've got them. And on your left-hand side, you find heat shrinks. Heat shrinks that are wide enough to get pulled through over an XLR plug, over a speak-on plug, yet narrow enough when shrunk to actually cover the cable and the RFID tag. So that's a big time saver. Now, the tagging part alone, 20 seconds. Really, believe me, I've got video footage to prove that it is 20 seconds. However, it's not that alone. It's also you packing the flight case from the warehouse, opening it up, unfolding all the cables, whatever, before you actually need to get done. So from that point of view, I would say bulk items, 1 to 1.5 minutes per cable. But how long it will cost you to have your more high valued assets being tagged, that's too variable for me to actually give a straight answer to. I would say somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes. And the reason why, not necessarily because you need to open up the flight case and paste the tag, but that's because the serial number is already out there. It's already known within your rental management solution. So you need to make sure that there is association made that that serial number now has this RFID tag. And that can be lengthy, of course. Now, good news, if you already have QR codes or barcodes mounted on your lighting fixtures, for instance, you could make that process way easier by first scanning the QR code and then scan the RFID tag. But that's where the 2 to 5 minutes come in. Yeah? Now, but let's turn it the other way around. Let's say you would have one full-timer, and that one full-timer would work 1 month. Just taking a look at if we say somebody have worked a month, what did they actually do? 21 days or 175 hours. Here you can see an overview that if they would have pasted 3,000 tags at the end of the month, it would have taken them 3.5 minutes per tag to achieve it. Yeah? Now, if you ask me, based on what I've seen coming by, this is a pretty good average. Yeah, you could expect one employee to paste around 2,000 to 4,000 items, 2,000 to 4,000 tags a month. Yeah? But maybe you should make sure that it's an intern. Good. So, could RFID be a solution for you? It's quite simple. Ask yourself, what do you find more important? As said before, it's this trade-off, right? If you just want to have a speedy processes, stay away from it. Stay away from RFID, stay away from scanning, just rely solely on yourself. If you say that you've packed 30 cables, it's 30 cables. Done. However, if there's a point of accuracy involved as well, that's where RFID comes in. Could also QR codes come in. However, then it could be with QR codes that you're spending too much time to actually have your warehouse processes being in line, what you saw in the beginning. So if you believe that you could benefit from decreasing those time spendings with, let's say, 5, which is again quite feasible, then RFID is for you. Yeah? Thanks everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.